everybody, it's Lisa Murray here, hanging out for another Martini Talk with today a very dear friend of mine, Rick Gillis, and you have written a whole bunch of different books all about getting employed and all kinds of really cool stuff about that world of employment and how to find the best job and the perfect job. But the latest book is Leveling the Paying Field, and it's getting ready to come out. It's going to be out
a week from tomorrow, which is September 28th, 2021.
Right, and so I want you to share with everybody what this book's about and tell me some details about it. I know a lot about it. Y'all know I have people on here that I know, so I already know a lot about it, but I want you to tell everybody watching all about it.
You do. I actually think you could do this interview, Alisa. Leveling the Paying Field came from 23 years of being in the job search space, and candidly it came from working with clients. What I kept seeing over and over and over, now this is, I helped start the very first job board in Houston, Texas, back in 1997.
Right.
That's what got me in the space, because right away there was nobody could tell people how to find a job using the internet. And so I was in demand. I was speaking all over the city, and that led to speaking all over Texas. I led to speaking all over the nation. And then I realized, and candidly, my first book was nothing more than my PowerPoint. Each chapter was a bullet, and I just filled the stories that I was telling people live. And that's kind of where my 4 job search books came from, each book superseding the last one, because the technology keeps changing a bit.
Right.
So that led to a lot of working with professionals. And actually, I worked with from brand new college degrees to CEOs. In the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, I was working almost exclusively with senior professionals, C-suite, senior VP, executive vice president, those kinds of things. And invariably, I was finding this, and this was all men too. That's kind of important. I was finding everybody, when I'd ask them what they had done, I'll tell you what, let me stop and back up a little bit. A requirement of mine is, if you're going to work with me, you're going to be required, and this is why I lose a lot of clients, which is fine with me, because if you won't do this, I won't work with you. I need you to put together a list of your personal best professional accomplishments. This is not it's not negotiable.
Right.
Depending on how many years you've been working, I might need 8, I might need 10, 20, whatever. C-suite, I'm going to require 12 to 15, 18 personal best accomplishments. You have to write out the who, what, write.
Right.
Actually, write, type. Who, what, where, when, why, and how behind every accomplishment.
Right.
When you have done that, and we have discussed it, and I've challenged you with all these questions, then you're ready to write a resume, or in the case of senior executives, a professional profile. And then you are ready to create what I call the accomplishments inventory. This is a professional document where every one of those accomplishments, and I've gotten really good at it, so I can help people reduce that who, what, where, when, and why. Some people can write it in a paragraph, some need a full page. But I can reduce it to one sentence, and that sentence is responsible for what that resulted in wow. Now, responsible for what? In my personal experience, back many years ago when I did real estate, I was responsible for creating a commercial lease document that resulted in $1 million plus annual savings to the company.
Right.
If I was interviewing with a real estate company, they would say, wow, how did you do that? And that's what you want. Because when somebody says, how did you do that? What they're really saying is, can you do that for me?
Right.
And that's how you get hired.
Right.
Express how you're going to make money or save money. Okay. Well, working with all these people, and they would give me these these descriptions of what they had done. And over and over and over, I asked them, I said, what was the net result? What was the value to the company? And they would say, and it was always this looking off and kind of blind, and they'd go, well, it came in on time and on budget.
Right.
And I'm like, that's not what I asked you.
Right.
I want to know what was the value of your efforts to the organization.
Right.
And invariably, I ended up coming up with these workarounds, because these people, remember, they were generally unemployed, seeking a new opportunity, and they didn't have access to old numbers, files and stuff. And so I started coming up with workarounds, and I'd say, okay, well, if you have this and this and this, I can calculate this, and we can get an approximate value that is accurate. It has to be conservative, and it has to be defensible. And that's where I get from the who, what, where, when, why, and how. But I got so tired of people telling me on time and on budget. That's not an accomplishment. That's what you're supposed to be doing. That's what you're being paid to do, to do it correctly.
Right.
But when somebody couldn't tell me how many man hours were saved, or how much money was made by the company, or how much money was saved by the company, that's where I would miss. And that's what came to Leveling the Paying Field. Now, originally, this was about getting people to that point, thinking about that. But the more I did this, the more I realized this is how you level paying between men, women, people of color, race, I don't care who you are.
Right.
If you can express your value, first of all, you're going to have a job. But more importantly, and the hardest part about this, and a lot of what the book is about, is explaining to people how to determine the value of what they do. Because I've always been a salesperson, so I know that, and I know as a commissioned person, I know what I'm selling, I know how much money I'm going to make, which means I know how much value the organization received. I want paycheck workers, hourly or salary, to start thinking like that in terms of what am I doing and how much value is that generating. Because let me go back to my story when I was in real estate. I was working for a company and I was doing really well and I was very proud of it, but when I came up with this idea, well, exactly what happened, and it's worth the camera and the story. I was at work one morning, or I came into work one morning, and there was a Texas sheriff in my office. This is in El Paso, Texas. There's a sheriff in his big hat and his big boots, and I walk in and he goes, "Richard Gillis?" Well, I don't like it when somebody I don't know calls me by my first and last name, and I go, "Yeah?" And he says, "You've been served." And I was being sued by a broker that said I owed a commission, and I said, "I don't owe this commission." I went back and I researched it. I called my boss immediately, who was in another city, and he said, "Do you want the attorneys?" And I said, "No, let me look into this." I looked into it. It was my mistake. I missed. My predecessor had done the original lease. I did the renewal, but I had missed where he had handwritten in, "Realtor will be paid on all renewals." I missed that. I was very upset with myself. Called my boss, explained. I said, "I need an $8,000 check to pay this renewal." He sent me an $8,000 check. I went and paid the broker. I came back, and the lady who ran my office, I told her, I said, "Gay, you and I are going to go through every lease we have," at that time 185 leases, "and we were going to make a cover sheet that's going to annotate any changes, whatever."
Right.
Okay. Well, I was solving my problem. My boss comes to town 3 or 4 months later, and he opens up leases. Every one of my leases now had a cover sheet with any anomalies annotated. And he said, "What's this?" And I told him, I said, "Brad, I was so upset because I said that was my mistake and it shouldn't have happened. I didn't read it, so I didn't want that to ever happen again." He looks at me and he just goes, "Whoa." Well, 3 months later, we had 26 office parks across the nation. The corporate had everybody doing what I had done. I saved the company millions of dollars.
Absolutely.
And I just said $1 million or so myself. It was actually more in the order of $2.5 million a year I was saving the company. That's the kind of stuff that people don't know, and especially paycheck workers. And candidly, I wasn't on commission at that time. I was also a paycheck worker. I was on an annual salary. Get my 3% bonus, get my 3% raise, whatever it was. But that was it. And I realized as I was coming to this that people who work for a paycheck don't really understand and know the value they deliver.
Right.
And they don't have to. They check out Friday when they get their paycheck, and they maybe re-engage at 11 o'clock Monday morning after all the catching up and the weekend and all that stuff. And I want people to think about the value they deliver. And I've got 14 Q studies in this book, and the Q study comes from my term, which I call the quotient,
Right.
which is the model for this. And the quotient is a formula I came up with, and this was the piece that really knocked me on my side, probably when I first started telling you about this.
Yeah, because guys, I've been a part of. We've been neighbors for years, and you recently moved away, which is very sad. But I'm so happy to have him back today on my couch because he used to be across the street from me. We waved to each other, but I've been aware of the quotient and that formula of how you make yourself valuable. For
4 years I've been working on this.
Yeah.
And so anyway, the quotient is a model that I came up with for determining that value so that you can create a rank for, and I need to explain this a little bit better. The quotient is the value of your contribution to your employer, the value of your work divided by your base pay. Now, when I came up with this idea, and that equals the quotient, which I call QTNT, I trademarked that, QTNT, but it's pronounced quotient. As soon as I had this idea, as a matter of fact, I was riding my bicycle here in the neighborhood when I had that idea, and I stopped because I would have fallen over. I saw all this, I visualized all this and what it's about, and the equalizing of pay when I had this idea, because I could see where somebody who has a higher quotient and is generating more value for their organization and can A and B that with their coworkers should be paid more money.
Right.
So while I believe in equal pay for equal work, I more believe in the proper pay for the best performance.
Correct.
And gender has nothing to do with that.
No.
Color race has nothing to do with that.
Done.
The person who can identify the value they're delivering. So a lot of this book is about teaching people how to determine the value of the work they deliver to their employer, who are not currently, doing that. They're not salespeople. The other side of that is, like I said, the book has, now that I just explained the quotient a little bit, there's 14 Q studies that are real examples of real people I've worked with, and I developed their quotient, and some of these are outrageously high. And one of the stories in there is a woman that I worked with, and this is really a great story because she's a friend of mine here in Houston, and we talked 4 or 5 times while I was writing the book. And one day I was talking to her, and in the book I call her Lisa. Her real name is Catherine, but so it doesn't matter because nobody's going to find her, right?
Right.
But anyways, I'm talking to Catherine, and she is an executive assistant for a health and wellness company here in Houston, medium-sized, and we're talking along, and this is probably a conversation 4 or 5. She's saying, "How's the book coming?" Da da da, and finally she just said something. She just blurted out. She says, "Rick, I don't even relate to what you're talking about." And I went, "Whoa, what do you mean?" And she says, "Well, you're talking about these people that saved $1 million and made $1 million." She said, "I don't even relate to that." And I went, boom. I mean, she kicked me upside the head, and it was such a great conversation because I went, "Catherine, you're right. I am wrong. I am neglecting." And so I challenged her. I said, "I would like you over the next several weeks, I want you to keep in mind what I call my accomplishments mindset. Pay attention to what you're doing and see if you don't do some things that you would not have noticed that are valuable to the company that you wouldn't have noticed before this conversation."
Right.
2 weeks later, she calls me. She says, "You're not going to believe this." And I said, "What's the deal?" And she said, I knew there was something wrong with one of the contracts and one of the people that was managing it, so I took it upon myself. Now, I need to back up a little bit. She was the executive assistant to the COO and the CEO. Okay? So she said, "I knew that somebody was not managing this contract correctly, so I took it upon myself, not her duties, to review the contract." And the woman Catherine found that she discovered $72,000 in credits that were owed the company on this under the terms of this contract, that this other woman running the contract wasn't taking. Important to this is, at the time, she was making $66,000 a year. So in literally 1 hour or 2 hours, she more than doubled her value to the company. Now, in my quotient model, I have a Q equal 1. Mm-hmm. Now, a Q equal 1 means you're earning what you're being paid. Everybody has to make their Q equal 1 in order to keep your job. However, a company cannot operate with a bunch of Q equal 1s. We need Q greater thans for people to make or save money. So, back to Catherine. She discovered a $72,000 win in no period of time at all, and she's making $66,000 a year. Now, her Q equal 1 is $66,000. She has to make that in order to deliver that much value in order to keep her job.
Right.
She's working for the CEO and the COO. We can assume she's there. She's been there for 8 years. So I know she's making that, okay? So there's your Q equal 1. Now, if you take her $66,000 and add that $72,000 she just found for the company, this is new money.
Right.
And it's savings or money made.
Right.
That comes to $138,000. Now, so you take this, and that is her grand total, her value of her contribution to the employer at this moment in time. She could have had several more of these during the year, but this one time. Now, then you take that, so you take the Q equal 1, 66,000, and you add the savings she just created. That's 66 plus 72,000 is now 138,000. Then you divide that by your base pay. So that same 66,000, the Q equal 1, you go and divide that in. And now, and I remember all this because I've told the story so many times, her quotient was 2.09. So in less than an hour or 2 hours, she doubled her value to her organization. Normally, she wouldn't have paid any attention to it. She would have just done her job. It was another thing, put it aside, keep going. No, you have to add these up throughout the whole year, and you add up those different values. And for example, I think it's in the book, let's say she had 15 such wins where she had 15 more times in the year. She made $72,000. I forget what the number comes to, but it's about like $1.3 million. Adding that 66, her Q equal 1, plus all these 15 or 16 different $72,000 wins,
Right.
just for illustration. And then you divide that again by 66,000. Her Q would be like 16 or 17, meaning she delivers 16 or 17 times her base pay to her employer annually. Mm-hmm. That's a big deal. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm a guy, mostly white, and you and I work together, okay? Or let's say you're a black woman, I'm a white guy, and my quotient this year was a 7, which means at the end of the year we took up all the value I delivered to my company, and I delivered 7 times my base pay. And you're a woman, and your quotient this year was a 23, okay? But I got the raise, the bonus, and the promotion. What's wrong with this now? Because now we have a defensible, measurable, the quotient is that. This will stand up. I have a friend of mine at the EEOC who said, Rick, I think that would stand up in a court of law.
Absolutely.
And I have not tested it, and I'm not asking any attorneys to test it. I think it would. More importantly, it's defensible, it's conservative, and it has to be verifiable. That's what the quotient is about. That's what the book is about. So I maintain that leveling the paying field is about individuals taking on the pay issue rather than waiting for the government or their company to embrace it and move forward, because there's not a lot of incentive for that to happen. Mm-hmm. However, and by the way too, I'm saying women, I'm saying people of color, this works well for white men too. This works for everybody. There's no gender, there's no color, nothing involved. This is a matter of knowing your value, citing that value, defending that value. At your annual performance review, you should have a list of all these accomplishments with evaluation, and you should be able to say, my quotient this year was a 27. Wow, that deserves at least a raise. And in the book, I mentioned too that maybe this was a one-off year. Maybe Lisa had a great year.
Right.
This year, or Catherine had a great year, and that was extraordinary. Well, maybe that's not worthy of a promotion or a bonus. Or a raise. Maybe it's worthy of a bonus.
Right.
Maybe she should get a bonus because maybe next year she goes back to just being what she does. Her Q equal 1. So there's ways of measuring this thing. Mm-hmm. There's lots of different moving parts, mm-hmm. but it's not difficult.
No, and it's interesting because my sister works in oil and gas in Houston, and she is in charge of counting barrels, and she discovered where there was a lot of stuff that was not being accounted for, and she saved them a lot of money. And I said to her, and of course all of y'all know I've never worked for anybody a day in my life, and never will. So my whole mentality of this whole waiting for a paycheck or having a review is just a whole bunch of blah, 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 blah.
Well, you have to do this every day, every week.
Right. I mean, it's a whole different ballgame.
So, you work like a salesperson, because you have to know that if you spend this money, you're going to get this back.
Right. But I told Elizabeth, I said, you need to sit down with your supervisor and you need to show them on paper how much money you have just located, because you have saved them a lot of money. Like, it's huge. There needs to be some sort of a star put on your file or whatever they do in corporate America, so that when you go up for review, you either like you said, get a bonus, or you get a raise or something. And
well, just imagine she picked up 3% of X dollars she made. It could have been tens of thousands, it might have been hundreds of thousands, or whatever. So yeah, and that's why we all need to be thinking.
Yeah, I mean, and I think part of it is, and this is going to, from my, because I've read the book, I've been a part of the process of it, I've listened to you, and you've bounced ideas, and we've had a fun time getting this one birthed.
Yeah.
Is that people don't realize their value, right? And they don't feel comfortable coming to the table and saying, hey, by the way, not look at me, but this is what I did. And they feel so like, oh gosh, I'm tooting my own horn. Maybe they're going to see me as some sort of a pompous, braggart, whatever. You have to be, well, it's not that. It's like when somebody says to me, what do you do? And I say, well, I'm a travel agent in real estate, and I'm an award-winning columnist, and I'm this and I'm that, and I'm a photographer, and this, that, and the other. And they're usually like, what? And then you're like, here's your business cards, and I hand them 4. I have no problem promoting myself, because that's what brings business to me, and that's what I have to do. People that are employees have to do the same thing. They need to get
and that is so important, and it's important, and I bring that up so many different times, different ways in the book. It is, and especially women, and that's been my case with working with professional women. This is not about bragging or boasting. This is about informing. It's that simple. Yeah. It's about informing. Now, if you're going to say, I sold 40,000 widgets, well, great. But what does that mean?
Right.
What was the revenue on that? I mean, if you sold them at cost, well, it doesn't mean anything. But if you sold them, you made 120%, or if you made 70%, or whatever. Wow, wow, wow. So it's not about bragging or boasting. It never is. And guys don't have this problem. And I have a little social mental thing about this. I think it's honestly, in being a guy, I've just thought about it through. Why is it that guys are so easy to just brag and boast and make noise? I think it's when little boys discover little girls that they start getting competitive and start, get out of the way, Billy, I'm chasing Susie, whatever. That's a stupid
Maybe.
idea.
I don't know,
think
but
there's
I've never had a problem doing that.
See,
I've never had a problem doing that. I mean, I don't know.
but
if
I
that's
also
'cause
know
I
your
was-
background. I know who you were raised by, and I know that you were competitive in that sense, and college and all the things you did.
Yeah.
So I think you're not the norm, and I don't want to say the norm. That's a bad thing to say. That's not fair, because I have worked with some professional women who are perfectly comfortable of asserting themselves and letting people know, and that's not wrong. That is so good.
Yeah.
And that would have been my mom. She was a real estate professional, so the same kind of thing as you, which you are as well. And that's also part of where I came from. Matter of fact, to close this thing up, I'd like to tell you that where I came from on this thing, and it was, as I was writing the book, it came to me. It reminded me when I was a kid, and I asked my brother for permission to share this story, and it's in the book, it's in my introduction. When I was 16 years old, I had a part-time job after school, and I was making more money working part-time after school than my mother was working 5.5 days a week, taking care of my brother and I. And that's a true story. And I don't tell you what all I did, but I have told people and stuff. But at 16, I knew that was wrong.
Yeah.
But I couldn't put my finger on it.
Right.
And this is back in the 70s.
Right.
And so I don't even. But I've had this in the back of my mind. So for me to come up with this idea, and I came up with the title of this book. My publisher didn't. I'm really proud of that title, because leveling the playing field is what it's about.
Yeah.
But that was a little God wink.
Yeah.
It just came out of the blue, and we were almost finished with the manuscript, and wow, what a name.
Yeah.
So I am really tickled.
No, I am tickled too. And guys, you're going to be able to get all the information on how to get the book in the episode notes below. And as always, it's always so much fun when we get a chance to sit and visit. I'm just glad you finally made it to the channel, and we get to promote your book.
Thank you.
I'm going to actually have links for all the other books as well, because there's a lot of books about.
Well, I'm down to 3 now.
Okay.
Yeah, because each of my job books superseded the other one. So it's my job search optimized book, and it's promote, and that's the best subtitle of any book I ever did. Your work does not speak for itself, you do.
Right.
That's the subtitle, which I say several times in there. And now leveling the paying field.
Yeah.
Those are my 3 books that are available.
We'll have all of that in the episode.
RickGillis.com.
Okay.
It's all there.
Perfect.
And pre-order for the book and order for the book is on there as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So good seeing you.
Good seeing you too. Listen, guys, we hope that you found some value in this episode of Martini Talks. If you did, do us a favor, like and share. Don't forget to ring the bell, and we'll see you soon on another episode. Take care.